So this is a pretty challenging time to be a Black journalist in America. Not that there's an unchallenging time to be a Black journalist in America, but this is a particularly challenging time. But it's also a challenging time for newsrooms and the people who inhabit newsrooms, whether they be Black or white, to make decisions about how to cover African Americans, African American issues, things like police brutality and systemic racism. I want to start with just your reaction to the way that American media is handling this moment.
Well, I don't want to paint anything with a broad brush, but I will say, because everybody's handling things in their own way, just depending on what corner of the country you're in. I will say that I am actually rather impressed that it has received the attention that it has, because there have been times previously where any issue like this would get tamped down simply because it got zero coverage or very minimal coverage. Now, could I say that everything has been handled fairly? No, absolutely not. There are some markets where sometimes you can see bias seep into some of the coverage. But overall, I am impressed, especially because it's been 90 days, more than 90 days, and the coverage is still there. It hasn't gone away. The flavor, it hasn't been one of those flavor of the week, and they've moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, you and I have worked in newsrooms a long time, and so we know how things work and how decisions get made. But give our viewers a sense of the way in which these issues get discussed and sort of debated in newsrooms as you're thinking about coverage, and how prominent Black voices are in those discussions and in those decisions.
Well, again, it depends on what newsroom you're in and what company you work for and what part of the country you're in. Because if you are fortunate enough to have a newsroom that has diversity, and there's not just diversity in the room, but you have diversity in leadership ranks and decision-making ranks, you can have more thoughtful conversations about how to approach the storytelling of these issues of today. And you can also have very thoughtful and considerate conversations about once the reporters come back about how these stories are going to be presented. It's very important that these things be thought through and conversations be had. And you have to have a diverse newsroom. Otherwise, you run into situations where if you have people in the room that don't have the empathy, don't understand, have never been in some of the situations, don't understand what the big deal is, then the way they frame the stories takes a whole different tone.
Yeah. I also think that there's a particular challenge here that doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the challenge to white reporters who don't share the experiences, obviously, that African-American reporters might have, but the need for them to be able to learn and try to gain some of the understanding and knowledge about the African-American experience that will help them cover these issues a little better. I'm not sure that I feel like in most newsrooms that imperative reaches the highest levels of decision making. I feel like it's a kind of lack of awareness of the need to have not just more Black reporters in the room, but also to change the way that white reporters and editors deal with these things.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think there's some that would argue that's one of the challenges that we're facing right now in policing, is that if it's hard to look in the rearview mirror and fix anything, but if you know that your reporters have not traditionally gone to certain neighborhoods, have not traditionally asked to interview people of color, have not traditionally tried to do uplifting stories in certain communities, then when it all hits the fan, you don't have an in. It is much harder for people to trust you. It becomes something that you can't really fix overnight in the heat of the moment. What I work hard to do is to make sure that not only do we have reporters of color in the room who can offer some insight and do have an experience that they can share with the room, but that we get our reporters that aren't traditionally in those neighborhoods out more often, and get them, I won't say trained, but get them familiar with the neighborhoods that they don't normally visit. I won't say, I won't go so far as to say that you have to have Black people covering Black issues,
Right.
because that just wouldn't be fair. I'm not saying that a white journalist cannot cover Black issues well if they work at it. But I would not sit here and say that I could cover women's issues fairly and accurately, because I don't have that life experience. Yeah. And it's important that that's in the room and that those opportunities will be made. I would hate for any news organization to just hire people of color, so when things go bad or things go sideways or they want reporting out of a different community, they can just send the Black reporter. That, to me, that's not really helping the issue. That's a very poorly attached Band-Aid.
And I think it's also imperative that this is work that has to go on all the time. The explosion of interest nationally in the BLM movement is a moment, and that's important. But to be prepared for that moment, you have to have been doing the work before. And I think that's how newsrooms and reporters get caught flat-footed, is that we don't spend the time when there isn't a crisis or when there isn't a huge news headline, getting people to understand that these issues matter, and that you can't just jump into them and really understand what's going on. We got to be working all the time to improve.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a proverb I use a lot that says, the time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining. We have to be in the neighborhoods when everything is okay and everything is fine. We have to have conversations with people just over normal topics, normal issues. So then when things do escalate, or there are issues that are more challenging, the effort to get into the neighborhoods and have people trust and talk to you is not nearly as hard.
Yeah. So as you said, your work at USA Today Network is focused on this, and you're the managing editor for Standards, Ethics, and Inclusion. I wonder what your sort of outlook is, your demeanor at this point. Are you optimistic about the media and its role here? Is it changing? Is it changing fast enough? Is it changing in the right ways?
I am optimistic. I'm optimistic for my company, and they did not pay me to say that, because our leadership has made a public statement that they will address diversity within our newsrooms and within all levels of our reporting ranks by 2025 to more closely reflect what the country looks like. Now that's a challenge. If you ask, is it happening fast enough? There are many who would like for it to be overnight, but you either have to have a big bucket of money that you can just bring a bunch of people on board, or you have to wait for the attrition and then be thoughtful about the hiring process and making sure that that you're bringing in really good candidates and you have that diversity. Now, when you ask, is the system set up right? Well, that's one of the things that I try to be involved in on a daily basis in any of the conversations that are had about hiring, because you know, I don't know if you're familiar with the NFL and the Rooney Rule. I don't want it to ever be one of those things. We're going to make it right. We're going to be better. And we're going to interview people of color because we believe they deserve a shot and we know they're qualified. But then the door is open in the front because of the Rooney Rule. But then as you walk them through the interview process, they walk out of the back door, and that's the end of it. And you said, well, I tried. We have to really put forth an effort to make sure that not just at the entry level, not just mid-career, but that the executive level and C-suite is also being addressed at the same time. It is a big ship to turn because we didn't get here overnight, and it's hard to fix it overnight. But I believe that we have mechanisms in place now, and we have enough people paying attention now that we will get to a much better place. Well, our company said by 2025. I believe we will have inroads by then.
Yeah. Okay, Michael McCarter of the USA Today Network. Thanks very much for being with us on American Black Journal.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.